Welcome to And It's Live, the podcast which dives deep into football's most iconic seasons, stories, and what ifs. If you love football, history, tactics, and nostalgia, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell, and drop us a like on YouTube so you don't miss an episode. If you enjoyed the show and want to help us grow, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. On YouTube, search for And It's Live Podcast. We've got new deep dives, drafts, and breakdowns dropping every other day. Hello and welcome back to the main event, part 2 of our 3-part series on 01-02 in the Champions League as part of a massive deep dive into the history of the tournament itself. I'm joined as always by Mr. Adam Thornton. Adam, how are we doing?
Doing good, thank you. Yeah, it's getting bigger. It's certainly an interesting one. This one, that Leverkusen team that we sort of touched on last year, not one that's going to have a successful season at all. One of the worst seasons, I think, or close to being great, but absolute failure. And yeah, we'll come on to. It's not exactly the start of something brave and new for them either. But yeah, it's one of those ones. There's not so much of a legacy here, but it's still a really interesting run for them.
Yeah. Be careful when we quantify a worst season when you get to the Champions League final and just miss out on the league title and whatever else. David's here as well. How are we, David?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, and I think at the time of recording this, summer 2024, of course, they've had their very best season in whatever, really. I think that they were not expected at the start of last season to go and win the title, and they did so. And it was remarkable, really, because of this era of Bayer. That, I mean, I don't know about you, but when I found out they hadn't won one, I was like, really? It just seemed extraordinary. But I think a lot of that is to do with this team, which of course, so identified with one particular player, but really was a very effective football team.
I think that's the point. I guess that this I think now is pretty much where they start to get that Leverkusen tag, because of how much this collapses. And I guess you could argue. I mean, I'd have to check, but they've kicked about for 20 years or so, but nothing threatening what they tried to do then, and obviously what they did do summer 2024. So, like you said, it's quite a fitting time to cover them.
We started last week talking about Alex Ferguson and his decision to retire at the end of the season. I'll start this episode in the same way, Davey, because on Christmas Day 2001, Kathy and all of the sons basically woke him up as he was snoozing, I think, on the lounge chair in the living room to say, you need to change your mind. You don't want you around the house. 60 isn't that big a deal. This is silly. You still got a lot more to offer. He toed and froed. He didn't think he may be able to kind of make it happen. What if they've offered it to someone else? Well, maybe ask the question. And they were very close to offering it to someone else because they were literally about to speak to Sven, who was... You could do no wrong in English football. Certainly a plan to take him to the World Cup and then take over Old Trafford. But there was a renege, David, and he decided actually no, he would sign a new deal and this wouldn't be his farewell. However, it could still be special because of the Glasgow final. But United's form, as a result, unsurprisingly, had a sharp uptick, I think it's fair to say, in the league. And as we go into the second group stage, they played a couple of games by then. They get Bayern Munich, their old foes, Boavista and Nantes. They're basically smashing teams at home. They drew 0-0 with Bayern near the end of it, Davey, but winning away in Portugal, a couple of draws in France and in Munich. They look much more impressive and much more like the team that had reached glory just a few seasons before. Just a wee bit of a rest period, maybe. In Europe.
Yeah, maybe. And football clubs and footballers, I think the worst thing is not knowing. And there's no doubt that it takes a real special group of players for it not to bleed into performances. Uncertainty is a bit of a killer. my favourite part of the story, although that is a wonderful image, isn't it, of Ferguson having his Christmas dinner, sitting down with a party hat, woken up to the 3-line whip of family saying, look, no. Story is when he announced it to the players, he said it and he walked out the room, and Roy Keane turned around to Dwight Yorke and went, "That's you fucked then, Yorkie," because he'd already started to sort of sour on him. And yeah, I mean, there was this upturn. Look, this is a squad full of very, very good players. He was trying to, I think, graft. We mentioned this last week, trying to graft a very good player onto the side and almost by happenstance get a system out of that. It wasn't. I don't know if you can do that, if you can radically change it, because the temptation to run back to what you know that works and has worked is huge. But then if you don't do something, you're left with this very expensive player. This great player, by the way. I thought Verón was a super footballer. Who you don't quite have a role for. And I think that this United is a sort of hybrid, suggests is the wrong word, because hybrid suggests a sort of a plan in place. It's more a juxtaposition of something that you've spoken about in the Revolution book, Martin, which is, we know we need to play this way for Europe. However, domestically, we know we need to play this way. And being torn between your bread and butter and winning the title and what you're doing, let's face it, week in, week out, but then this aspiration, this higher calling. And I think this season for United has been a very big part of it. But there is absolutely no doubt that removing that uncertainty, Ferguson saying, I'm here for the long term. Of course, it turns out he's there for another 11 years and wins. It meant that everybody could just get on with it, know what they had to do. There's not that speculation in the press. And just as an aside, Martin, the last point you mentioned there, Sven could do no wrong. This is the first, I think, where it turns a little and the press start to go after him a bit, and you get the Ulrike Jonsson stuff and all the rest of it. And I think it was the very public flirtation with Man United that did it.
Yeah, well, it certainly wouldn't have helped. And we'll knock this on just a little bit, then come back to some of the second group stuff, just to finish off United for the show. They go through to meet Deportivo La Coruña. They've met them the season before in the quarterfinals. Ryan Giggs playing up off Ruud van Nistelrooy in Spain, running riot. They take a 2-0 lead back to Old Trafford. They were never in danger of going out. They win 3-2 at home. Again, looking far more comfortable, far more like it. However, all anyone was talking about after that night and for months in England was the metatarsal of David Beckham, which was broken and a kind of coming together. It was a bad challenge, but you probably see them most weeks in football at times. And England kind of went weird for quite a wee bit, touching the newspaper front pages and stuff like that, and hoping that because if Sven was the Svengali, I mean, Beckham was absolutely the talisman. That performance at home to Greece at Old Trafford, funnily enough, that qualified on. It would be up there in the biggest kind of one-man performances in a team sport you could think of. He covered just about every blade of grass, but this was all very odd. But United suffer for that as well, not just England.
Yeah, they definitely do. And this was the first. I think that's the first I'd ever heard of a metatarsal injury. And then when was Rooney? What was Rooney? When was Rooney? Was that 2004? Was it?
6. Yeah. Next World Cup.
2006, wasn't it? Because 2004 was Portugal. But yeah, you never really heard about it. And then
David Beckham does something and it becomes cool, Adam.
I know. Yeah, I think it's easy to look at that 98-99 season when Beckham was terrific and say that was the high point. But yeah, I think there is how crucial he is for club and country. I think at this point is potentially underrated, and I think I always hate when people say, "Oh, you know that fantastic player is actually still underrated," but I think it is. I think it probably is true with Beckham because he just had that movie star celebrity thing, which meant he was just spoken about all the time. about that, but then you actually look at him as a player and people think, oh, all he can do is cross the ball and all he can do is this. But you see, I mean, this period that you're talking about just now, dragging England through that game, and once Man United get over that sticky patch and get going, I think he's brilliant there. So he was huge. He's the type of things that you wouldn't expect a pretty boy, fancy winger to be, that dig and leadership and industry, like you said, all over the pitch, etc. I think it was crucial at this point for both of them, 100%.
Okay, back to the group stages then. Adam, we'll still stay with you. Barcelona Group B with Liverpool, Roma and Galatasaray. We'll talk about Liverpool and Roma in a moment. Barca, 9 points. They, again, looking fairly good again. They go to Anfield, they go one down. Makelele puts Liverpool ahead. Anfield trying to kind of resurrect that big night atmosphere. Again, I'll come to that in a touch. But they do look far more impressive than we've seen them of late in this competition. Why?
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny how you get wrapped up in the narrative, I think, sometimes, and you know, looking back, so in my head, you've got Barcelona as Cruyff in the 90s, and there's the dream team, obviously, for a few years there. Then they kind of lose their way a little bit, and then Van Gaal comes in, and you think it's good until it's very much not good. And then in my head, you just think there's just a barren spell until Rijkaard comes in and starts to kick off that sort of pre-Guardiola cycle, and then obviously it goes into that. And you just think of it in those ways. Do you know what I mean? It's like good, then not good, then good, then not good. But he said there's some great performances here, fantastic goals. Rivaldo still really, really strong at this time. I think this is Rivaldo's last big season at Barcelona, and therefore his last big season anywhere, really. We spoke about that a while back. This is him on the downturn, but still very, very impressive for me, I think, at this point. Looking at the squad, which again is maybe something that you do without really thinking about the individual results and narratives, but looking at the squad, they are probably in a little bit of a mess. They're right in the middle of that period that they had where they lost that La Masia identity, the Cruyff total football thing with Van Gaal coming in, loads of Dutch players in there who'd followed him, some South Americans starting to come in again, Fabio Rochenbach, Javier Saviola, Bonano, the keeper. It's all transitional, whatever you want to call it, the result of mismanagement with various managers coming in that are completely different to their predecessors. All that sort of stuff, I'm not sure really was planned for them. So they are, I would say, still in a bit of a transition. But like I said, they're battering through this group. Their second group stage, they're looking decent. It's one of those strange things when you actually take a step back and look at it. You feel one thing, but then when you actually drill right down into the individual performances and games, they're actually doing quite well.
I went to see them this year. Me and my ex went on holiday to Barcelona in October 2001, and I wrote an article about it for Follow back in the fanzine days. And one of my few predictions that I've ever got right is you get the feeling that this club is kind of close to having potential, but not quite sure how to do it. And of course, they then go on and dominate the latter half of the 2000s. So well done, me. But they were going very big on the guys you mentioned there, Adam, Saviola, Rochenbach, and Ronaldinho, and their marketing was all around them. And the thing that struck me is, I remember we went into the Barcelona Museum and everything, and they were taking out like old stuff of the De Boers, and Dutch stuff was all marked down in the corner, and it was all these three, and it was, wow, that's a lot of pressure. Basically they had signed, obviously, Ronaldinho, a fabulous footballer, but Saviola and Rochenbach, and it was, these guys are going to be the franchise players. These guys are going to be the face of the club for the next however many years. Defensively, they weren't great, but they had Carlos Puyol, and he was fantastic. Really, really was. Absolutely held them together. This is such a weird group. Because, we talk about groups of death, and even so, they usually end up someone, gets away. But Barcelona win 2 matches. Liverpool win 1, and 4 draws. Yeah.
We'll come to that in a minute. Sorry, the Liverpool one. Let's pick them up because we'll come back to Barcelona later because they were in a bit of trouble. I'll come back to you, Adam, in that quarter final against those bloody Greeks again. That last game, then, Davey. Liverpool have drawn 4 games, lost 1, going to that final match day on 4 points. Roma have 7 points. They come to Anfield. Tensions are always high between these two clubs. That final in 1984, I don't think was particularly enjoyable around the ground and inside the stadium. Anfield rocking for a different reason because Gerard Houllier had collapsed. I think they played Leeds earlier in the season, hadn't been seen for about 5 weeks, and there was a bit of speculation that he would take his place back in the touch in the dugout, and he did. And that really was, Davey, one of those Anfield nights of old, and would become kind of resurrected really over the last 20 years or so. Liverpool get a penalty earlier. Yari Litmanen scores it very early on, 7 minutes. Big Heskey finishes the job later on. And it's a cup tie, even though it's in this group phase thing that we're in the second stage. It really was a proper kind of one-off game, and it was a special night for Liverpool, that, and probably the first sign that they are back to where they kind of once were in terms of that aura, that kind of stature in the game. If you're going to Anfield, it's going to be a bit of a night.
Yeah, you certainly do. Look, as soon as Houllier emerges onto the touchline, Jesus and his apostles could have played that night. They weren't beating Liverpool. The place was insane, just in a positive way, just really, really behind the team, and it inspired them. And a point that you've made, Martin, on Seagulls over the years is that Liverpool are good at harnessing that emotion. They are a club who run on emotion much more so than, say, a Chelsea over the past 20 years or whatever. They're very good at harnessing it and using it correctly. And this night they did that. I thought Roma froze a little bit. I remember at the time thinking Roma froze a little bit. They concede the penalty, but it is still only 1-0. There have been so many draws in the group, but there's just a certainty about the Liverpool performance. And when they get the second, it's done. And everybody, even Roma, seem to accept that it's done. And you're absolutely right. This became, and is still, as we record now in 2024, a staple that Liverpool are not done in. Part of it will be interesting to see post-Klopp, of course, because he was identified with it. But this is proof that it's not something that arrived under one manager who had a certain chemistry and connection with the fans. You saw all through the 2000s with different managers, different guys in place there. Obviously, we're just about to go into in a couple of shows, we'll go into the Rafa era. And he could channel it. They are a club, a sort of lesser version of Real Madrid, but a bit like that, a bit like Milan, that when you've had so much success in a competition, you carry yourself differently in it. And even Liverpool sides that aren't great probably achieve more than the same 11 players a manager would at another club, because there is something inherent within that club that can propel them. And it does. And the fact that we're looking at a Liverpool team who... or a club rather, sorry, not a team, because the team changes, will make 2 Champions League finals this decade. Yet when you look at the squads, it's quite... I wouldn't have put money on them at the start of either campaign, put it that way. And it is something that's within the structure and the DNA of the club. And when Ibrox gets like that, it's pretty special. But when Anfield gets like that, it's pretty special. And also because of the reputation of Liverpool, they carry that. Teams have already bought into it before they arrive, almost a wee bit like the Turkish thing when it was at its zenith. Totally. The whole we are, and that does affect. And I think you can see that Roma are inhibited, and they never get out of that. Whereas if perhaps they had maybe been able to stymie Liverpool get a goal, again, though, that night I doubt it, because there was no way that Liverpool crowd was turning on the players, not at all, not that night.
Group C then, Adam. Panathinaikos get out of it ahead of Sparta Prague and Porto. Again, we should be looking into this really as a kind of precursor about what's possible internationally in a couple of years. But Real Madrid, 16 points out of 18. It's not the hardest group, I know, but they just appear to be kind of in perfect harmony with big players, but still with balance, and it's just ticking so nicely. I'm not entirely sure when in this tournament they're going to be in major jeopardy.
No, maybe the last 20 minutes of the final. We'll come to that. Yeah, if I mean, everybody who's listened will know I've not exactly got any love for Real Madrid overall, but I think this is probably up there for me in terms of, I think you used the word balance before on this, but it's probably up there if I was pushed in terms of just how good they are. Just everybody is excellent at their position. It's just a really solid sort of 4-4-2 diamond. Roberto Carlos is as well in the groove now. At Madrid, you've got Salgado on the other side, who's just a really nice foil. It's not even really as if it's a one defends and one goes. Obviously, Roberto Carlos is more attacking, but Salgado can still get up there as well. But you've got two wingers, Figo and Santiago Solari, who I thought was quite underrated. Makelele, who, I mean, it's any team is probably going to look like they're well balanced when you've got Claude Makelele in there, and then the front three, Zidane, Raul, Morientes for the most part. I think it's just got a really nice balance. Two great centre halves as well, Hero and Helguera. I mean, you can't really argue with that. So there's just talent everywhere, but it's not what it was a couple of years before, where we're talking about this one guy is doing this, and there's still quite a few players that are out, but and it's definitely not what it would become 2, 3, 4 years down the line, where it's just completely unbalanced, and they've got Thomas Gravison appearing because they needed a defensive midfielder from somewhere when Makelele left. So yeah, it's harmonious, and like I said, it's probably, if such a thing exists, it's probably my favourite Real Madrid team at this point. So yeah, they are absolutely on fire in this league. In this sort of second group stage, you can't argue with 16 points from 6 games. No, definitely not.
And Davey, that final group of the second stage, Group D, Depor, that was spoken about, go through in second place. Bayer Leverkusen through top of the group, joint in points with Depor. Arsenal and Juve would, I imagine, probably be the two clubs that would be maybe most fancied before that group kicked off. I'll come to Adam for where Juventus maybe kind of tailed off. I don't know that season. Arsenal started poorly. They lost in La Coruña in the first game, but then they picked up. They kind of batter Leverkusen in that back-to-back middle section of the group. They were very unlucky not to win in Germany. They needed an Ulf Kirsten, or late Ulf Kirsten equaliser. They absolutely twatted them at Highbury. They twatted Juventus at Highbury before then, and Henry and Ljungberg, and it just, everything just seems to be coming to the boil. They're on this incredible run starting into that springtime. It starts at Anfield very late, just before Christmas 2001. A brilliant game, actually. They won 2-1, and this is the invincible run. Obviously, this is going to go for some time. Oh, sorry, it's not. It's a precursor to that invincible run. It goes way into 2003. But this, they're going to go and win the title. Is that where their focus maybe just disappears, because they lose at home to Depor at Highbury in the second last game, both on 7 points. Depor's head-to-head means that after that, it doesn't matter what Arsenal do in Turin, they're kind of untouchable. Is it just that focus on, right, we've got a league title here that's absolutely within our grasp, or is it just a sign that Arsenal in Europe don't go, or Wenger in Europe don't go?
A bit of both. I think that you're absolutely right. If you look at going into that, because they had battered is the right word. I mean, the two previous matches, they had absolutely, destroyed. A great performance in that 4-1 victory, and at home to Depor. And there's a wee bit of revenge. They maybe caught us cold in that opening game. We were over there in Spain. That can happen. We're going to show them and put them in their place. Maybe slight overconfidence. I'm a great believer to this day that there's the famous name rule in football, which means that you will always go, ooh, Valencia ahead of, say, Villarreal, even though Villarreal maybe have the far better side. And I think that with Deportivo, you're thinking we're Arsenal, we beat Deportivo. I think that the league thing is a legitimate shout, though. It was, we can't dismiss that epic head-to-head between Arsenal and Man United that had been going on for a few years. And Arsenal have been on the wrong end of it now for a few seasons. And that was a very, very big thing for both the clubs and both the managers. I think because, it's become almost a chuckle. Wenger and Ferguson, they really didn't like each other at this point. And I could absolutely see the focus being on, look,
as
we're
it
winning the
should
title.
be.
Yes, no, absolutely. And then,
out for dinner, for lunch, comparing notes, comparing philosophies. You need needle. Who is this? Who is this guy? This professor? Yep. He just come from Japan. He should shut his mouth and that kind of stuff. You need captains want to absolutely nail each other and stuff like that.
Yeah,
that's what you're
and that's what made it so great. So I think if you'd said to any Arsenal fan, of course we can't make these bargains, it's a bit silly, but still, at the end of the season, would you have traded going further in Europe for not winning the title? The answer, of course, would be no. They were a special side, and I at the time it was a big surprise, and even looking back, I wonder if there's slight regrets. If they had maybe just got through this group stage, who knows? But they were not a side who took to Europe in the way that you would have thought they would have, because I mean, my goodness, the side doesn't it look absolutely perfect for European competition? The players, it looks built for it, and they had some recent-ish pedigree, the Cup Winners' Cups through the 90s, but yeah, they just never quite got to the pitch of the ball, did they?
Adam, did Arsenal have a Makelele? Do they have that kind of tempo setter that's just given that kind of discipline? That midfield just looks a lot more all action. I just wonder if it's just a wee bit too much going on, and maybe just you need that wee bit of nous and composure sometimes in those away matches, certainly in Europe. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good shout. This was the period where Petit had gone to Barcelona 2 years before, and then he was at Barcelona 2001, and now he was at Chelsea now, I'm sure, and this season, if memory serves me. So yeah, obviously they had Van Bronckhorst in for him. A different type of player. I don't think anybody would say that Van Bronckhorst was number 6, as you want to call it now, defensive midfielder, water carrier. I don't think Petit was necessarily just that as well, but there's an element of Petit that was more about defence and structure, whereas Van Bronckhorst was box to box. We'll get you the goals. So yeah, there's a little bit of that. I think Ramondi and all those guys run about this time as well. This is when he starts to, and I think it's quite good to come into these points, but not quite now, because obviously we've still got a bit to go until we hit the sort of downward peak, but he'll almost start to double down on his philosophy and being miserable in terms of like finances and money, and just refusing to pay the money, almost to cutting his nose off to spite his face. I guess Wenger, when obviously Chelsea start Nick the season after, really, when Ranieri and Abramovich are kicking about and Man United start to equal it. He almost just doubles down on it and goes within himself and goes to the academy and tries to replace great players with much younger, much injury prone, much inferior players. And it is one of those things. I'm not saying that replacing Van Bronckhorst for Petit is inferior, but when you've got guys like Gramondi trying to deal with it, who was the guy? This is not at this time, but the young player was it a man? What's his name? He had that catchphrase. Was it Dench or something? His catchphrase was. I can't remember who it was, but anyway, I'll see if I can dig out the name. Defensive midfielder. I'm pretty sure he was English. I'll try and get the name. I'll try and Google it when someone else is talking to see who it was. It's really annoying me now. But like these type of things where if you're going to replace Petit or Van Bronckhorst or Vieira with players, obviously Fabregas isn't here yet, but dipping into the academy and it's just players that never really work. I think that's the issue. But I would agree. Looking at some of the lineups, you've got Perez on one side, Ljungberg on the other side. You've got Vieira, fair enough. Viltorden on up front. You are missing, I'd say, a little bit more in the middle for sure.
So, without that metronome then, at this time, is it really a team that's built for Europe? Unless you're going to do what they did to Juventus and Leverkusen at home and just utterly tear them apart. It's either that or they're vulnerable. It's built for England, as they are going to show this season, as they will show pretty much for the next couple of seasons, especially with 3 or 4. But again, in Europe, you just need that wee bit of maturity. Who knows? But they certainly wouldn't be going through. And Juventus quickly, Adam, disappointing after the start. What happened?
Yeah, they were, and we've been waxing lyrical about them hoovering up the talent that we mentioned. Thuram, Buffon, Salas, Nedved, all those guys coming in. It doesn't necessarily work out. We mentioned on last week's show, obviously they won the league, but it could have been it went to the last game and it could have been one of 3 that they won the league. Salas, it didn't work out. He got that injury. Put him out for the season. I think he only scored 1 goal from 10 games. Didn't work out. He had a terrible time at UV overall. Had to go back to River Plate and stuff on loan. So I guess it's just one of those things. You look at it and you look at a window and you think they've done great there. Not sure it really pans out. Buffon and Thuram, brilliant. Nedved, I don't think he got back to what he was at Lazio. For me, I think Lazio was his peak. They kind of struggled, I would say, for goals from other areas. Trezeguet had a ridiculous season, and so did Del Piero. Obviously, is always great. But other than that, just having a wee look, Igor Tudor got 6 goals, and he's the 3rd top goal scorer, and he's a centre half. Nedved with 4, and then after that, you're at Ciro Ferrara, Tacchinardi, and Davids on 2 or 3 apiece. Like, they were overly reliant on the front 2, and it's a fantastic front 2 to be overly reliant on, but maybe similar to Arsenal, or maybe the opposite to Arsenal, sorry, if Arsenal had attacking central midfielders or attacking players that can chip in, Juventus maybe didn't from a sort of midfield point of view. So I think it just shows you look at a squad and you think, oh, they're going to have a great season. They've recruited really, really well, and obviously they win the league, but they'll be disappointed to go out. I think where they did, particularly when it's Deportivo and Porto going through. I think they would have been odds on. Just before I forget, the player I was thinking of is Frimpong, who appeared. It was a few years later, quite a few years later, but I guess that sort of sums it up when you're trying to replace central midfielders of the quality that was spoken about with academy guys and expecting them to do the same thing. It's not going to work.
I think one of the interesting points about Juventus is that they're sort of a reverse Liverpool. That in the European Cup, Champions League, whatever you want to call it, that there is a real gnawing feeling at the club that they have underperformed in it over, a 70-year period, basically.
That there are times rather than a feel.
That's exactly it. Yeah, that it holds them back in the way that Liverpool it frees with Juventus. There is this feeling that they should have delivered more in it. So, of course, that increases the desperation, and there are quite a few finals, but just not as many, two, and one of which they don't really take a lot of pride in.
Oh, well, indeed. Quarterfinals then. Dave, I'll start with you, because we've already done United and Depor. Champions League royalty meet for the third time in a row. Real Madrid and Bayern Munich, whoever wins this wins the tournament, it would appear, over the last couple of seasons and this season as well. Real Madrid, Jeremy, the much forgotten about Jeremy. He was quite well thought of around this time, put Real ahead. And again, it looks like Bayern are going to do spawny Bayern things by scoring 2 goals late on, take a 2-1 lead. I quite liked the second leg in the Bernabeu, Davy, but a couple of goals in the second half of Aguero and Guti puts Real into the semi-final. But there is just... Can't remember if we'd see these two go at it again off the top of my head. We'll obviously find out as we go through this in the subsequent recent years after this. But it felt that this is right, okay, who wins next season? These two are kind of going to come together pretty much every year and decide the whole bloody thing, regardless if the quarterfinals or the final or whatever. Yeah,
both sides have now demonstrated it. And remember, we're still not even a decade into this thing. So there hasn't been an awful lot of time to establish yourself as a side who's always going to be there. But these two have. And they've already managed to do that. And of course, they're, top these names, Real Madrid and Bayern Munich, two behemoths, or behemoths even, I'll pronounce it correctly, of European football. So there was that sense. There's our boy Guti again. So many crucial goals, so many assists, and I don't think he's this is the thing, I don't think he's underrated in Madrid.
No,
Guti. I don't get that impression at all. I think he's valued and venerated. Out with it, maybe a little, and I know Adam's point of how can you underrate a guy who's won, that we all agree is a good player. Underrated, then maybe not the right term. Not spoken about enough might be the term. But then again, there is only a set amount of players that you can, and they've had so many amazing ones that maybe it's just inevitable that some will slip through the crack. I always liked Houllier, by the way. I thought he was again a very modern player.
Classy.
Yeah, absolutely. But also, that these days that Pep loves a hybrid, a Stones type. These days it's almost a fullback who can't go in and make the extra man in midfield and take the ball on the turn. Houllier, he could play in quite a number of positions, and he was obviously talented enough to do it. But more importantly, he was aware enough to do it. And that's the thing about, there's a difference between being a utility man who can go in and do a job, right? That's not the case at a club like Real Madrid with the ambitions that they have. If you go into a role, there is still a very exacting, specific tactical standard you have to live up to. And he did that. I think he would be a very popular modern player for his ability to take up different positions within a game and within part of a bigger team structure.
No, definitely. They're good pals then, Adam. Barcelona, the easy draw, it would appear, given the 8 quarterfinalists. Panathinaikos, they're in Greece first. They lose 1-0. Basinas with a penalty late-ish. Okay, turn them over. The Nou Camp, of course. And they're 1 down in 8 minutes. Constantino, again, names that we would become familiar with a couple of years, or more familiar with, a couple of years later. They come back, Luis Enrique goes either side at half-time, and then Saviola getting the crucial winner overall. Made kind of heavy work of this, Adam. How much was weighing on Saviola? You still got Rivaldo there, obviously, but Ronald Jr.'s not going to arrive until 2003 because they didn't get Beckham and they went for him instead. How much is Saviola carrying on his diminutive shoulders, given that kind of role at that club before, of course, we know what happens after?
Yeah, I felt a little bit for him. I'm pretty sure Saviola was one of the players that you would sign on Chapman and for River Plate the year before. So he was somebody that you were aware about. Obviously very, very young when he burst through at River Plate, and he gets that. I think he gets that move to Barcelona when he's still a teenager, and he has a good spell at Barcelona. But I don't know many people that would look back on it and think he was a game changer. He was this and that. But I mean, he 21 goals in his debut season, 20 goals, 19 goals. In his first 3 seasons. I think it's a really, really solid return. I think the issue is he probably shouldn't have been seen as the main man there. I mean, he absolutely is at this point, which is kind of bizarre and just sums that up because you've got Rivaldo there as well. So I mean, this season obviously he kind of shares it, but he's the main sort of number 9 if you like. They've got Luis Enrique, they've got Marc Overmars playing round about him. But yeah, I think a lot probably fell on his shoulders. You've got Xavi there, who's not the Xavi that we'll see 4 or 5 years later. He's still learning his craft. And then other than that, you've got, like I said, a mishmash of signings that they're trying to integrate and players that they potentially want rid of because Van Gaal isn't there, although he does come back the next year. They're maybe struggling a little bit as well with that on the managerial front because they've got Charlie Rexach, who I've probably butchered that pronunciation, who was obviously a great player for Barcelona. Was a winger for them in the 80s, was Cruyff's key man. Anybody who's read the Simon Cooper book will know loads about that relationship between them. He stepped in a couple of times to be interim manager. I think the year that Cruyff had to get heart surgery, I think, and he was out for a bit.
El Tony Parks.
Yeah, a few times. He was even a scout, and he's the guy, obviously, that I'm sure everybody knows the famous story of signing Messi with the napkin in the restaurant. It was the year before this, I think it was 2000, late 2000. He signs whatever age Messi was at that time. I don't know, 12 or something like that. He signs him with the napkin in the restaurant, and obviously, so I guess just for that alone, he'll go down in Barcelona history. But he was a scout at that point, and he'd been sort of pushed out, and then found himself back in the chair the year after. Tony Parks, Graham Murray, one of those ones. So he's effectively manning the ship for a bit.
Can you imagine, by the way, what would have happened if Rangers ever appointed the fucking scout as a temporary manager? And the worst part is I wouldn't put it past them to do that. But yeah, you're right. Just this extraordinary career that he had. Like, I think he pretty much did everything at one stage at Barca, didn't he?
I think so. Yeah, involved in La Masia, scouting, coaching, all that sort of stuff, and then I'm sure ambassador things as well as it went on. Just one of those guys that was just always kicking about. I think that's a thing in that book as well. The Simon Cooper book is about those kind of lifers, if you like, and there's obviously the membership as well, the coolies that they hold quite a lot of authority and quite a lot of sway with the fan base and also within the club. So having those fans, if you like, who are effectively in positions as well was quite a good conduit for them. So he's probably a person that they really wanted to keep around, and he was seen as a sort of steady ship between Van Gaal and whoever they would go to get. They didn't fare much better the year after, which we'll come on to. I think they went through 3 managers then before they eventually settle on Rijkaard. So yeah, there's good players here. This is a good victory to get them through. Obviously, we'll come on to the Clasico. Getting to the semi-final is great, but it's a lull for me in terms of what's came before and what's going to come in a few years' time.
I mean, I just can't imagine Rangers over promoting someone within the club just because it's cheap. You just can't see that being possible. One final quarter-final before we finish. It is a proper fucking Champions League quarter-final. Liverpool versus Bayer Leverkusen. Everything you want in a 2-legged affair. The first one being tense as all hell. Sami Hyypiä with the only one in it. No away goal, setting everything up for Germany. And it's just, again, just a perfect kind of second leg. Ballack from distance, just twats the ball into the top corner after 16 minutes. Everything's up and running. Abel Xavi of Portugal and Liverpool fame and Everton fame and Christ knows how many other clubs, with a powerful header from a corner not long before half-time. Vital away goal for Liverpool. And then Ballack, but just a brilliant header. I mean, just a fantastic header. Just looking so powerful. Almost like kind of powerful, maybe a wee bit more gritty Frank Lampard in the way he performs, the kind of goals he scores. Putting Leverkusen in front. Dimitar Berbatov getting the crucial third. So Leverkusen are ahead, but then with only 10 minutes to go, Jari Litmanen classily finishes off a move. Liverpool are now going through on away goals. As I said before, Rob Smythe shitting himself because they're due to play Manchester United. They've beaten United at home and away in the league that season. They're on a run at this moment in time. They look actually and on fire for the rest of the season, and someone lets Lucio Adam into the box, and it's straight through Jerzy Dudek's legs. It's powerfully hit. It's a great finish for a big man, for a centre back. Good and all feet. That. But 4-2 ends up on that second leg, 4-3 in aggregate. Twists and turns, momentums, and as the game goes on, the more it becomes stretched and frantic, and you can't pick a winner. It's everything two-legged cup football should be.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. It is just a fantastic game. It's got it all. I think you think they're going to run away with it. Then another team comes in, and Litmanen had a great season at Liverpool. It wasn't obviously wasn't very long. He didn't do fantastically well at Barcelona. We've spoken about him months ago or years ago in this context. At Ajax, he was great. Here it's probably his last great season, I think. Just one of those players that would just pop up with those crucial goals. So I thought it was a really, really good game, and it sort of we'll come on and talk about Leverkusen in much more detail in the final, but I think it probably sums them up here. They also have a really nice balance. I know we spoke about their players a bit last week. You mentioned Roberto. I thought he was fantastic for them. Obviously missing for the final, and that probably hampered how they play a little bit. I thought he dealt with it really well. Liverpool again. I mean, just looking at the lineup, just completely unenthuses me.
He makes some strange choices this night, Houllier. Yeah. He decides he wants to play Abel Xavier at right back. I have to admit, by the way, I've been watching Xavier quite a bit when he was at Everton, of being very much an agnostic about him. Right, I'm sure he's very good. He had to be, just not when I watched him.
I couldn't be bothered with him after that Euro 2000 semi-final with the handball. But it was, mate. I know it's really so. I know it's golden goal, and I know it's Zidane. So you don't even have to take. You have the penalties kind of given, and I know it's all over for you, and Figo's walking off and all that, but his remonstrations were
would they get 9 months for that? I think he got. He got a jail sentence, but I was never a fan, but Houllier clearly was, because they took him from Everton on a Bosman. Plays him at right back, which means he has to move Jamie Carragher. So he moves Jamie Carragher to left back, and he pushes John Arne-Risa into midfield. I didn't get that at all. If you're going to do so, and the fact that they concede 4 goals, if you're making changes like that, I think you're lessening your own defensive solidity. And I don't think you're gaining a lot in an attacking sense. So I just can't understand what the thinking behind those changes were. Why wouldn't you just play Risa and Carragher in their normal positions? Why are you accommodating Abel Xavier?
Well, managerial tinkering is something we'll talk about, I think, next week. It's a funny season for Liverpool because they don't win anything. They go out of both domestic cups early. Their league form is weird because they start pretty well. They finish like an absolute thoroughbred, but they've got this horrible winter, horrible December and January. Kind of not kickstarted. They get hammered at Chelsea 4-0, but then Arsenal win at Old Trafford at Anfield just before Christmas. That's a key win, as I said, for them, kind of going on to win the title. But they finished second, which is the highest league finish for for some time, certainly in the Premier League era. And clearly it's going somewhere. But yeah, it is a funny old game set because they don't end up with anything to show. And it looked like they were going to go through to the semi-finals, and they do not. It's Leverkusen that do. So United v Leverkusen, United hot favourites for that, and a Classico to look forward to as well. Thank you, David.
Pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, Adam.
Thank you.
And we're back next week for the semis and the final in Glasgow. Cometh the hour, cometh Zidane. Until next week, bye for now. If you enjoyed the show and want to help us grow, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. On YouTube, search for And It's Live Podcast. We've got new deep dives, drafts and breakdowns dropping every other day.